Welcome to another edition of AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. My name is Camille Renner, and I'm the Associate Editor of AutoSuccess Magazine. Today in the AutoSuccess studio, we have Chuck Worley, the OEM Specialist with Naked Lime Marketing. Welcome to the studio, Chuck.
Thank you, Camille. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're glad you made the trip up here. To begin, I'd love to just give our audience some background on you and how you found yourself in the automotive industry, what you do for Naked Lime, and maybe what Naked Lime offers the industry.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've been in automotive since 2005. Started off in a dealership and have been working on the software provider and digital marketing side of the industry since 2007. Been with Reynolds for quite some time. So I currently, as you mentioned, am the Naked Lime Specialist for our OEM team. So I work hand in hand each day with the OEMs to help them develop and roll out digital marketing strategies for dealers across the country. And, a lot of people, like you said, kind of want to know a little bit about who Naked Lime is and what we do. We're an Omni-channel, really a customer journey focused digital marketing agency. That's what we do. We've been doing it for quite some time. The company started in 2011, grew out of some organic development that had happened within Reynolds and Reynolds. We had more and more of these needs emerge from dealers for assistance with digital marketing and just help with this new and developing industry. So in 2011, we split off and started the Naked Lime division. So it's been, hard to believe, over a decade now of services to dealers and OEMs.
So Naked Lime started as just Reynolds and Reynolds.
Right. Actually, back in the day, it was called Reynolds Web Solutions.
Oh, okay.
That's what, and it was literally just basically websites, and then this thing called SEO came out, and paid search, and then social media, and it was like, okay, this clearly is kind of taking on a life of its own, and we need to have a dedicated division to focus on that. So that's where Naked Lime came from.
Absolutely. So does Naked Lime focus on all aspects of a dealership, like the variable operations as well as fixed ops?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And, we really view the dealership as a holistic entity, right?
For sure.
And it's really to help, what we're after is to help dealers market to that consumer. So whether it's variable ops or fixed ops, either side of the house. And obviously in today's world, things are rapidly changing, right? So dealer strategies are changing. And we've had a lot of recent conversations over the last year or two specifically about fixed operations. That's been a hot topic in the industry.
Yeah, with the inventory shortage, I think a lot of dealers are having to focus more on their fixed ops just to stay afloat.
Yeah, no doubt.
So on the fixed ops side, getting those high value repair orders in is huge for dealers. Mm-hmm. How do they do that? How can dealers bring in high quality work in the first place?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a question that a lot of dealers are really trying to figure out the answer to right now. There's so many things that are in flux in the industry, and not only is it inventory shortages like you mentioned, but we have a personnel inventory shortage as well. Right. So a lot of dealers are having a hard time finding technicians or just people to fill their dealership from an employee perspective. So it becomes more and more important to think about those high value ROs, right? And reaching out to consumers is a critical step in that. So thinking about, first and foremost, if you're a brand, you own a dealership, you want to be top of mind for the consumer, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to be found for any of the services that you provide. But in a time, a kind of a transitional period like we're in right now, you have to be even more intentional with how you're targeting those high value services, right? So being top of mind for the consumer is definitely important. But then you've got to be a little bit more strategic than that with it. It's not just a matter of branding. It's a matter of really controlling the message that goes out to the consumer, understanding where you as a dealer provide the maximum amount of value to the customer and how you can communicate that via whatever marketing or advertising channel that you're engaging in at that time, and being really specific and targeted, and not just saying, hey, come here and get 10% off service, right? That's easy to do. Anybody can do that. But thinking really specifically about what kind of capacity that you have in the shop, the skill sets that you have, and then crafting your marketing message around that to tie specifically to those high value ROs to make the best use of your time that you've got available with your limited staff right now.
Can you go into detail a little bit more about what exactly a high-value RO would entail?
Sure. Yeah, we talked about the importance of being strategic about the messaging around that. So what does that tactically look like? If we think about where the money is, it's really in those repair jobs, right, versus just the maintenance jobs. So certainly we want to bring customers back in on the maintenance side and keep that rolling. But the high value play there is to go after that repair business. So, for example, if you've got a customer who's having a mechanical issue or something along those lines, maybe they've got a clunking noise in the front end of the vehicle when going around a corner, right? Anybody who knows vehicles, if it's front wheel drive vehicle, chances are that's some sort of a CV issue there, right? So thinking about the messaging that goes out and how you're advertising that, you need to have some sort of content out there to be able to grab customers' attention. Maybe it's something as simple as like, hey, why does my car make a clunking noise when I go around a corner? People type that stuff into Google all the time. How are you going to show up for that? And then what is the content that's going to show up at that point? Is it just an ad that says like, hey, 10% off of service, like we talked about? Or is it specific content that says having front end problems, come see us, or something along those lines, right? And then even incorporating multimedia. The reality of it is in today's world, video is huge. It just continues. The year-over-year growth in online video is just massive. And I know you guys do a lot with online video. It's kind of why we're here, I think, right now.
Yeah, we're doing a video right now.
but being able to provide that content's valuable. It's what people are looking for. So making sure that you've got some content out there, and again, in a variety of media. Younger generation might be searching for something like that on TikTok.
Sure.
Right? So just thinking creatively about how you can provide valuable content to the consumer that's going to lead them to you for those high value ROs, and that can make a tremendous difference.
With videos, is Naked Lime participating in the content creation, or is it more just strategy helping the dealers?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And again, the other thing that's important to think about with that is like knowing your dealership and knowing your personality. The reality is in today's world, I use TikTok as an example just now. That's so heavily reliant on user-generated content, local, specific, finding someone who's got a personality at the store, who can make some viral type of videos, right, that get people interested. That kind of grassroots effort is essential, and then layering that in with someone that can provide some strategy on how to go to market with that content and the variety of platforms that you can use it on. There's a lot to digest there, right? But finding ways to engage via video is definitely important. It's something that we certainly help with as well.
So are you suggesting and/or are you seeing in the industry service lanes becoming specialists in certain types of service, or perhaps communicating that they are really trying to push one type of service?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not so much that they're specialists in one particular type of service, but the bigger factor there is thinking about, if you drive all the vehicles have our own OEMs, and there's certain skill sets at the dealership, right, that you don't want to necessarily take your vehicle to a generic type of repair shop to have major service done on it. A lot of people are not comfortable with that. So, for example, thinking about marketing some of those larger services, thinking about targeting specific types of services that are going to be relevant to if you're a high-end dealer, right? Sure. And thinking about some of the complexity and electronics and things that are in the vehicles nowadays. It's not something that customers want to take a chance on. So those would be a couple of examples of things that you could market effectively in order to get the customer in and have that high value RO come in and get that work done. And ultimately you drive a lot more value for the dealership when you're thinking more strategically about the messaging that way. And so as the dealer, you got to think about, when I'm thinking about customer retention, it's like, okay, well, what's the value that I bring to the consumer? Why should they come to the dealership? Why should they drive the extra 5-10 minutes to come to the dealership versus going right around the corner to that other repair shop? So a couple of things. Number one, making sure that you're staying in touch with that consumer with relevant messaging. So if they're already a customer of yours, you've already got a big leg up. So making sure that you're staying in touch with them with relevant messaging, and making sure that you are where they are when they are. So what I mean by that is you need to be where they are regardless of what they're looking for. So if they're on social media, you need to be on social media. If they're a heavy email user, you need to make sure that you're using effective email marketing. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's, there's all of these different channels. Maybe they're active Google users and they're doing a lot of research, right? You've got to make sure that you are where they are when they are, or you're running the risk of a missed opportunity, because that's an extremely competitive marketplace. You just go do a search for, tire shop near me or anything along those lines, and it's massive amounts of revenue that search engines are generating off of those search terms. So making sure that you're showing up there. And then the other thing is because they're already a customer of yours, you've got information about them and their vehicle. So leveraging that information in your messaging and not just sending generic information, right? But leveraging the information about them and their vehicle, their mileage, their driving habits, whatever it may be, what they had done last, maybe a recommended not done that they turned down last time, and trying to bring them back in for that. Those are all really, kind of best practices and good ways to keep control of that customer and not let them slip through your fingers.
Absolutely. And here at AutoSuccess, we always say that we need to meet the audience where they want to be met. And that's kind of what you were talking about. And speaking of engaging customers, and going back to more of the high value repair orders we were discussing before, say a customer comes in and decides not to do their repairs with a dealership, how can they get them back?
Yeah. This is another one, right? Money walking out the door. Mm-hmm. You've had the customer in, you've identified an opportunity there, and the customer says, "Hey, no thanks. I was just here for an oil change. I don't need those brakes. I don't need those tires," right? And what do I do? And so, it's really important to make sure that you've got a good process in the dealership to identify those opportunities, those recommended not dones when they happen. But once they walk out the door, then how are you being proactive about it? So thinking about a way to make sure that you're getting relevant messaging back in front of that customer, again, via a variety of channels, because if I just send you an email, you might see it, you might not. So thinking strategically about, okay, engage via email, engage via social media, make sure that I've got good search terms out there for those commonly declined services, like a few that I just mentioned, right? So making sure that you've got a good cohesive strategy around that and that you're being proactive. Ideally in a perfect world, having some sort of an automated system to do that, right? To where a customer walks out and then they start getting pinged with messages to bring them back in. And incentivizing them to come back to the dealership, because ultimately, right, the longer we know this, the longer they go without coming to see you, the more likelihood they're going to go to one of those other third-party repair shops. Mm-hmm. And that's what we don't want to do. So the more intentionality you can put around messaging, and if you can automate that, that's really kind of the win-win scenario there.
But it's hard to kind of decide which channels needs more of my attention. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How do you suggest dealers pick, for example, email marketing campaign versus text message marketing, or do they really need to have their hands in all of the different types of messaging?
No, this is like another huge question, right? So we have like 3 hours to talk about this one.
Right?
So this one's particularly interesting because there's a couple of things to consider. Number one, local and regional trends. There's different sites and tools that are more popular in different areas of the country. So understanding your local market is a really important piece of that. Also understanding your consumer, right? Different brands have different demographics that represent those brands. So understanding the demographic that you're targeting, and then which of those channels is the best one to appropriately target that demographic. And then just in general around your dealership brand image. What are the things that you've built your brand on, and how effectively can you get your message out via those different channels? So those are like three kind of key things to think about when you're determining channels. There's really not a secret, formulation that I could give you as to what the right amount is, but you got to understand your market, you got to understand your consumer, and you got to know who you are as a dealership, and then working with someone who has enough expertise to be able to say, okay, based on this information, let's craft a strategy around that so that we make sure that we are hitting that customer at the right time with the right message and being where they're at.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just changing gears a little bit here, as much as we all probably want to stop talking about the inventory shortage, it still is a real problem.
Yep.
But dealers are finding solutions to the problem, one of which is acquisitions in the service lane. What have you heard about that going on in the industry? How can Naked Line marketing in general help with that?
Sure. Yeah, this is another good one, right? So if we think about where the industry's at right now, we've just seen so much, upheaval is really, it's the word that I think of when I think of what's happened. The industry's completely been turned on its head over the last few years. And so it's kind of maybe even a little bit hard to even think about like acquiring vehicles from the service drive. That might be a new concept for some people. For others, they've been doing it for a long time. The conversation's not even so much around vehicle acquisition from the service lane. It's strategic vehicle acquisition from the service lane. Because, for example, there was a dealer that I was working with a few months ago, and they were, their issue was they had plenty of opportunities in the service lane, but to your point, they didn't have the inventory to be able to support that. Right? So what do I do in that scenario? So, it's a little bit of a shift in mindset for dealers to think about, the service lane certainly is a great opportunity to be identifying those target opportunities, those strategic opportunities for customer retention to move them into a new vehicle. But the challenge is, if I don't have the vehicle in stock, what do I do? So there's another layer to that now, where it's not only trying to get that vehicle in on trade, but then really being a guide or a concierge through the ordering process to help customers find new vehicles that you may not have in stock, which is the reality, right, of today's market. But being able to walk them through the process and being viewed as a valuable consultant to walk them through the ordering process. And let's face it, like consumers are very unique, right? So there's a broad spectrum of personalities out there and preferences. And so where you might have one consumer who's very comfortable researching all the specs, identifying the model that they want, going through the ordering process online and handling that all themselves. On the flip side of that coin, you've got the opposite end of the spectrum where you've got customers who are really intimidated by that and don't even know where to start. So if you can use the service lane as an opportunity to provide a new type of value to the customer that they've not experienced before, and talking to them about the fact that they can come and spec out their next vehicle and begin that process for them and walk them through it, potentially all the way through the process of completing that order that day, that's a really great opportunity for dealers to think about new ways of doing business in this time of upheaval.
And being a trusted consultant, as you said, probably helps reassure return customers when they do get that new car in the service lane.
100%. Trust is a huge piece of everything that you're doing as a dealership. And if you look at what consumers are valuing in today's world, they certainly value convenience, right? They certainly value being able to have their needs met, but they're also valuing trust really at higher levels than we've seen before, because it's so difficult to vet out all of your options in today's world. We have so many options at our fingertips. It's like, where do I start? If you can build that trust and maintain that trust and continue to foster that with your customers, it really puts you in an advantageous spot to be able to retain those customers for the long term and then build that. We love the repeat and referral business, right? So that allows you to build that business out. And it really does start to kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier in the conversation. It starts early in the process, right? When that customer's out there doing initial research, if they're looking for a vehicle or if they're looking to have service done, they're really looking for that brand that they can trust and messaging that is relevant to them, that they know they can trust, and allowing them to go through the process with an organization that has demonstrated via marketing channels, via personal interactions, via the tools that they provide, the processes they have in place. All of those elements are going into the trust building process with the customer, and that's really valuable in today's market.
Definitely it is, and we're seeing it across all different industries, and I think it's for the best.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for your insights today. Our guest on this Executive Spotlight has been Chuck Worley, the OEM specialist with Naked Line Marketing. Thanks for coming in today, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you.